vampires, clowns, alligators. We know what Hollywood thinks scares us, but what scares Hollywood? Rotten Tomatoes. Join us as we descend one horror movie at a time for movies rated 60 to 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, looking for hidden gems among the not so fresh. How low can we go? As far as our eyes and our sanity will take us. Hello Weekly presents The Revenge of How Low Can We Go?
Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly, and we're back with The Revenge of How Low Can We Go.
I am so excited about this because we kind of winged the first time we did this series, and we had a really good time with it and discovered a lot of movies we either wouldn't have watched or on our own, or kind of came back around to reappreciate that we'd watched when we were younger or heard about or whatever. But it wasn't really like planned out. We didn't even make it to zero, but we had a way better plan. It's going to be way more kind of thought
It's back
through
with a vengeance.
It's back.
Dude, I was thinking about that before we started recording this because I was sort of kicking myself that we didn't get to zero. But then I just reset the title in my head. And I was like, how low can we go?
Well, that's true. That's what happened. But I think this time we're going to make it because we're bringing guests.
Yeah, this will be fun.
This will be an interesting setup because we're reaching out to a lot of people in the horror community to find out what movies they want to fight for that got critically bashed or forgotten. And it's going to be really, really fun to watch people get passionate about movies they think deserve a second look.
What's going to be fun is to watch people get passionate about a certain film and then to watch it and it just sucks.
Speaking of, that halfway happened for this one, which is weird because so the first How Low Can We Go iteration, I can't remember what we started with, but the way this goes is like this.
It's like The Mummy or Hell Night.
So we're basically trying to take down Rotten Tomatoes. I don't like aggregators in general. I mean, they have their place, but I think it leads to a cartoonishly quick assessment of movies without giving them a real fair chance.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people who have literally had conversations with me about movies that they haven't seen just based on the pre-buzz.
Yeah.
They're trying to convince me about this or that or whatever, right? Which is hard to do. So
it's weird. I have a love-hate relationship with Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people, especially in the Hollow Weekly group, a lot of people are like, fuck Rotten Tomatoes and all their stuff. But I'll be the first one if a movie comes out that I love, has a 98%. I'm like, look at that.
It's like Yelp. Everyone hates it, but everyone uses it, right? So, but that's the thing is, the one thing is they have their place, but they are way more inaccurate than people really kind of think. I think, especially when you consider how we approach things, which is a lot of times we feel like movies deserve a reassessment after time has passed. I mean, there's so many movies that I watched that at a time in my life and then came back and watched and thought totally different things about later, right?
Yeah, with Hell Night, there wasn't an updated review for that movie. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But that's the thing is what the first time we went through this series, I think we had a really charmed path for the start of it because I don't remember watching any movies that I felt like were even partially bad for a lot of the series.
It took a long time.
So we start at 60% and go down to zero or as close as we can get before we
then we got to 11 or something like that.
Yeah. And
it was like landing a plane. We started skidding.
And it's one at a time. So one movie for 60%, one movie for 59%, one movie for 58%, et cetera, et cetera. And we started with, like you said, Silver Bullet, Hell Night. Those were the movies that were at the top of the 60 to 50 range, right? So this week, what we're doing is we're restarting the series. So the reason we're not going to cover any of the same movies, we're taking a totally different path. And this one's going to be more determined by the movies that people suggest to us.
Yeah, it's not going to be descending
choices, right? But we are descending in a path. But the thing is that this week we're doing Jack Palance's Dracula from 1973, which sits at 59% of Rotten Tomatoes. So it's our, it's should be the top end of, and this movie is is not great in a lot of parts.
Yeah, like with the first Helico go, it was like 40%. Like we got like 20, 30 movies under our belt, and then we were like,
and we were feeling so cocky. We're like, all these movies are good.
Then for Revenge of Helico we go, like we just start off with a hot.
Well, it is the revenge. Now I'm not looking. Let's get into this movie because I actually really liked a lot of what was going on in this movie. I think the primary problem with this movie is how it aged.
Well, you mentioned it was made for TV,
yes.
Which I was reading about it. It was gonna air in October, which makes sense. And then I think Nixon did some kind of speech or something like that, and it got bumped to February. Yeah. So like your Dracula film got bumped to Valentine's Day.
Well, there's a lot of fond memories of it. I don't think that it was the reception of the movie that hurts it. I think it's how it was made. So this movie was, I think, written, directed by Dan Curtis, who brought us the original Dark Shadows. And he's a legendary. He was like...
You told me the story about Dark Shadows, and that blew my mind.
And he was like Chris Carter before Chris Carter. Like he kind of...
Who's Chris Carter?
X-Files. He was kind of like the X-Files before... Because that's what Dark Shadows became. It became this thing where people were tuning in week to week. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was getting weirder and weirder, right? When you didn't expect it necessarily. And not nearly as polished as X-Files, obviously, but it has its own charm. I'm actually a big fan of the Dark Shadows films. So like House of Dark Shadows and et cetera. So I really like this guy. I think my favorite thing he's ever done is Kolchak the Night Stalker. So he did that as well, which is it stars Darren McGavin, who's the dad from Christmas Story, and he's hunting a vampire, and it's an amazing movie. And the weird thing is that movie and Dark Shadows and this all should have aged similarly, but they didn't. Kolchak is still really watchable with almost no laughing at like things that have gone wrong age-wise. Mm-hmm. I would say Dark Shadows is in the middle. This one takes a hit from how it was made, but it is made for TV, and I don't think that. Well, Kolchak was too, but I don't know. I don't know why this aged like this, but it's weird. But let's get into it. So it's Jack Palance playing Dracula,
who. Like, I knew him as the old guy in Tim Burton's Batman.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm my number one guy. That guy.
That's amazing.
That's how I knew him.
Yeah, and he was in a lot of legendary movies. He was that kind of second tier of famous actors like a Lee Van Cleef or whatever that everyone knew their voice or their face, but they never really were top bill for much of their career, right? So, and he's known for being kind of hammy and chewing the scenery and doing. Obviously, from Batman that he was the corniest thing in that. He was
great,
movie.
Man. Yeah,
but he was also great.
So,
right? So that you think that would work for this, but his performance is really problematic for now because when you said it while we were watching it, when he's still and just menacing and kind of lurking Michael Myers style, it works.
Yeah.
And when the camera's zooming in on the day for night shots,
literally anything else,
and he's like squinting, like he can't see, and he's trying to be menacing, but I don't know why they made that choice. Now, let's put this in. So here's I'm gonna fight for this movie mild, right? I'll mild fight for this.
Okay.
Here's my favorite things that came out of this movie from this watch. I had never seen this movie before. So first of all, I feel like anyone who likes Dracula needs to see this movie just for the completest element, right? Because it is an interesting take, which we'll get to in a second. Because I think that's one of the two things I really want to fight for. But I'm going to start with the one that's more interesting to me first. The interesting thing is, I think the male performances in this film have aged poorly, and the female performances are still really good. And I don't know why that is necessarily, but I think it's really interesting because it's kind of like it's fitting for Revenge of How Low Can We Go? Because they probably weren't the main draw for the movie. It was probably the big names like Nigel Davenport and Jack Palance, right? And then it turns out I think that their performances are the ones that carry this movie now, the Fiona Lewis and the female performances, right? So, and I don't know why that is necessarily, except for maybe that they were just because they weren't the big eye-catching roles, maybe they were doing it like actor style with no pressure. I don't know. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe how this happened, but I found them really believable, and I found like the doofus, the husband of and there's a story change in here, right? But the guy who is helping Van Helsing fight off the Arthur, right, is his name. He's an idiot.
They're not both like
Harker is an idiot. Van Helsing is not particularly bright.
No, he feels it feels like it's his like first vampire hunt, and they're just like winging it.
and like even Dracula's wives, I thought were impressive.
Dude, yeah, like there was a really cool shot where I think they're in the castle, and then they spin around and they're just standing there staring.
Totally,
and, like that was pretty freaky. It had a lot of like cool shots in it, but like. God
so
damn.
here, let me organize this. So there's three things I would fight for. I would fight for the fact that it's an interesting artifact where half the performances were held up really well and half of them have decayed badly. Second thing is there's a lot of really cool shots. Not so much atmosphere, but really cool shots and ideas. And the third thing is Richard Matheson wrote it. So he made some really interesting changes. So he's the first person to make it a tragic love story vis-a-vis Dracula, which Coppola straight up ripped off. And a lot of people have ever since, right? But he's the first one to do it. And we were confused even watching it because the story got completely changed. Dracula was in love with Lucy, didn't care about Minna, as they pronounce it in this movie, Minna Harker, didn't care about Minna at all, right? And then when Jonathan got killed, and you turn to me while watching it, and you're like, so Minna's going to end up with some random other character in this story? Like, her fiance got killed. Like, so in the Coppola one, Keanu's hair goes white, and then he marries.
He comes back.
Winona Ryder, right? Like, so they have that reconnection or whatever. And this one, he's just
they push him onto a little spike. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. It's over for him.
He's just gone.
But there are some really interesting changes that happened from Richard Matheson, who's an incredible, legendary horror and otherwise author. So there's a really, really bright mind lurking behind a lot of what's happening here. So those are the three things I fight for. But go ahead. I remember one shot that you pointed out to me that I thought was my favorite shot, which is the grounded ship, and there was a guy with a cross. He was holding it. It was the guy who lashed himself to the wheel.
Yeah.
And Dracula was just standing next to the shoreline, and the cross was pointed to him, and he just didn't care.
Yeah, it was like you saw. It was like cross closest to the camera, dead body with his mouth open. Then there's Dracula looking like a Christian rock band album cover, like that South Park episode. And
yes,
but anytime they had that dude standing, like it looked cool.
Yes.
And you know what's funny though is like you were saying like the performance from the women was better than the dudes. I actually like they were better, but the guys were so entertaining because of how cheeseball was.
So that's the thing. Is I think they were all equally good actors. I think this is a really good cast. I just think the male performances aged badly.
It aged as well as those camera zooms did, which I couldn't believe. It was funny because the movie started and there was like 4 camera zooms, and you went, "Oh, we're gonna see this a lot."
Yeah, this was. I felt like I was watching Austin Powers. The way the camera, everyone would have a dramatic moment, and the camera would zoom in like that squirrel meme, and I was like, "What?"
It is the least atmospheric Dracula film that I think I've ever seen.
See, I disagree, but only I get what you're saying. I that's true, except for
like the first.
You're right. It feels really
film.
hollow. I feel the set is really small. You can the castle is really nondescript. I get what you're saying. It's just it started with a lot of good atmosphere, but I think it
started with like a shot of good atmosphere, and then it looked like they shot like the next hour in an office because the lighting was just. I mean, it's the brightest vampire movie you're ever gonna see.
This is the Midsummer of Dracula movie.
It's so goddamn bright.
Like it's really weird, but the atmosphere I'm talking about isn't so much. So like when they go to kill Lucy. In Coppola's, it's the famous "The Woman in All White."
Yeah.
In this one, when they do it, I felt like the grave that was really good atmosphere. I felt
remember we were laughing because they got to her grave in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, they just
teleported. They were just there.
That was weird, but I liked that setting. I liked when they returned to his castle for somehow it got better. I don't know why. I liked all the underground where all the coffins were stored.
After like an hour, during one of the funerals there was some rain, and then the castle. That's when at the end of the film the castle grew on me because like I was familiar with the rooms, but it was just so bright and so, it was just weird. Like it felt like a made for TV Dracula.
Totally, absolutely.
But it had a lot of charm. The one thing that I thought was really strange was the grunting Dracula did. Mm-hmm. We were watching it, and then Alex and Ginny were in the other room, and they're like, "It sounds like an elephant making a noise." Anytime Dracula had like an outburst, it was like, and like he knocks over shit.
It came over weird. His smashing things around, a la the end of Citizen Kane scene, was ridiculous. That was really dumb. I did like how he sort of plowed through the whole crowd of people who were coming for him. You've never seen Dracula do that. He always vanishes in mist or a cloud of rats or, turns into wolves or, whatever. But this one, he just did out of my way, get out of my way.
Yeah, he just
like,
pushed.
They were like bowling pins.
They were like Wii Sports. He just like tossed them.
But that was kind of cool, to be honest. I guess I sort of like that part. I could tell that the Dracula performance wasn't gonna rank in my top when Jack Palance got to a door and and I forget who he was chasing at that point. It was either Minna or Lucy, but he gets to this door and she locked it, and I was looking at it and I'm like, there's no way he's going through that door because he can't. Like, he just didn't feel powerful. He felt like he could be thwarted by like a decently built door. And it was weird that it felt like that, right? Yeah. Because you're not used to Dracula. Like the vampire in Kolchak, the Night Stalker, is super powerful. Like, he's really strong and really sinister, and that's what I was expecting from this. But that vampire is the Nosferatu style. Like, all he did was growl. He didn't really have language. And I think, this was a really, it was supposed to be a really articulate Dracula. Like, when he met Harker in Transylvania, when he was talking to him almost more normal than any Dracula I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was just
definitely
let me see the
more
photos
than Bela or Gary Oldman or whatever. Yeah. So that I don't know that part of the performance or whatever. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I love. So I actually loved. Here's where I'm really going to fight for this movie. I think this movie did, believe it or not, on probably 1,000th of the budget. Good old Dan Curtis reached down into his bag of tricks, or just his heart, because he reminds me of Don Coscarelli somewhat, of the Phantasm guy. Mm-hmm. That he's just really imaginative, really committed to the material. Maybe not the best director of all time, right? But like, he really is committed to what he's doing, and he can really pull off great scenes or moments, or just because you can tell that he cares, right? But this movie with almost no money did what Dracula Untold was trying to do. This is a warrior Dracula.
Yeah, he did talk about. He did.
There were all the paintings of him, and he was like leading armies, and he's like, whatever. There's this moment where he's scoffing at Van Helsing. He's like, "You want to match wits with me? I've led entire armies for hundreds of years before you were born." And you dare to try to outmaneuver me, which is hilarious because he did. But it was still that thing. But what really sold me on it was the absolute last shot. I feel like if you watch this movie, you can't give up on it. You got to make it to the last couple minutes, because the last couple of minutes, I think, are what the movie was really trying to get to the whole time. Mm-hmm. And it was hit or miss, but once you get to that point, so the way Dracula dies is kind of amazing. He's the way he's staked and left behind, and he's spoiler, he's just staked to a platform or a wall or something like that,
like a table flipped over.
Yeah, and his head's bent down. It was kind of Shakespearean, because when the camera pulls back, there's a painting of all his most glorious battle victory behind him, and there he is, proud, leading his armies. And then what the movie did, which I've never seen before, which is really cool, was Dracula was gone. He was already dead. He was staked through the heart, and that was it. It was over. And you started to hear these sounds, and it was troops cheering for him and calling his name. And there he was, defeated by two idiots, like just staked to a table.
Well rested idiots.
What a really, yes, we could get to that in a second. But what a sad end to this military career. And I think the point of it was that having to live this satanic, debased, preying off people lifestyle instead of like being the head of armies fighting for your country or whatever that was, it just grinds you down. Like he thought of himself as 400 years ago Dracula, but he's not. He's now Dracula, and it's kind of pathetic, which you think wouldn't work because you don't want Dracula to be pathetic, but because it was kind of the end of this process, it shows you why vampires, at least in Richard Matheson's mind, I'm guessing, why vampires can't just live forever. Even if you don't catch them or stop them or hunt them down. Like, picture the underworld universe, right? Mm-hmm. If humans never came for any of these people, or they never like tried to hunt them down or fight, there was nothing. They would just... They live like like Eurotrash. They live like rich, like they just like drink expensive,
wear leather,
and wear leather, exactly. And they would just do that forever, right? Mm-hmm. But this vampire lifestyle is just this clawing and scratching for anyone to assuage your loneliness and to try to stave off the process of just becoming more and more insane and more old and more weak. And I like that it did that, right? Like, that was the best of this movie, but it didn't do it enough. And it saved it almost all to the end, which was weird.
Matheson's writing was definitely like the strongest point of the... And I mean, honestly...
Except for... Can we get to the funny parts? Because except for... It was like the... what are those YouTube genre videos? The don't celebrate too early.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It was like that. We were like a third through the movie. We just turned to each other. We're like, there's this big boring stretch in most Draculas, even Coppola's Dracula. Mm-hmm. We're just like, okay, get on with it. I don't want to see Mina and Lucy and their husbands at the parlor having cucumber sandwiches.
Get to the cool shit, man.
And a lot of that got excised from this movie, and we turned to each other like, good for Richard Matheson. He took out all the boring parts.
Shit.
And then it went on this 10-minute detective Encyclopedia Brown segue of them tracking all the shipping receipts of Dracula's boxes from Transylvania to London. We went to like 5 offices with them, and
just for them to be like, you got that paper?
We just turned to each other like, why is this in here? What the hell is this? That was bizarre.
No, so if anyone's writing a Dracula, an updated Dracula, make sure you add your 10 minutes wild goose chase. That needs to happen, apparently.
That was bizarre. And then who I'm going to just go ahead and call Arthur, the guy with the ridiculous hair, who's Van Helsing's sidekick.
He was...
Did he have narcolepsy? He fell asleep.
Dude.
Every time they put him on watch, he fell asleep. Every time he was supposed to be protecting his fiance, he fell asleep.
And he never did anything.
No!
He didn't, I don't know if he at one point in time like pulls out a gun randomly, and while he's like on watch, and you're like, oh wow, he's packing heat. Never uses it. Never does anything.
He does 0 things. I was telling you, he's the Frodo of the Dracula movies. Like, I hate Frodo's character. He just carries a ring. Everyone else does everything for him. He just like basically...
Well, Frodo lets go of it at the end. That's pivotal. But
after 28 hours of cinema, he drops it into a volcano.
Yeah, but you're holding on to this powerful ring. This guy, though, didn't even do that.
No, he didn't do that.
I mean, he did
0 things.
Seriously, like Van Helsing at the end of this movie should be like, so I'm gonna give you 0 credit. You're gonna have to retake this class.
But Van Helsing didn't seem to notice this guy was an idiot, which made me give him marks down.
I think here's my guess. If I was at Van Helsing, I'd be like, listen, fighting vampires is a dangerous game. I need a bumbling idiot to take a fall in case something crazy happens. Because that guy would take the first bite or the first slash.
Makes all kinds of sense.
That was his purpose.
It makes all kinds of sense.
At least in my Van Helsing's brain.
There were some really cool shots in this. There's nothing super fancy, but there were moments where the camera would pull around and shoot through like a carriage, and you'd see people plotting in the background and whispering to each other. There were, like I said, I love the Dracula impaled shot at the end. There were some really cool moments in terms of, I like that Harker, when he's trapped in Dracula's castle, escapes up instead of down. He ends up on the roof, and we get this amazing shot of like all of Transylvania from the roof of Dracula's castle. There was some cool stuff like that in there.
He had those weird henchmen that just kept catching him.
Oh yeah,
those two. Those were so weird.
They were super strange.
This is the weirdest Dracula I think I've ever seen.
Well, you haven't seen Andy Warhol's Dracula, obviously, but like
yeah,
this is a pretty. Well, like I said, I think it's the Don Coscarelli Dracula. That's how I think of it. I think it's like Phantasm. It's good. It's great in parts. It's laughable in other parts, but it gets across on performance, commitment to the material, and then just there are some still pretty emotional and or not scary. I wouldn't say scary. Nothing really holds up enough to scare you in this movie anymore. But
no,
unlike Kolchak, which still has packs a punch, but not this one. But there are some moments where I felt like I didn't want so when Dracula was lurking or whatever. There are a lot of horror movies, especially newer ones I watch, where I feel like the characters are acting scared, but I don't believe that they're scared. I couldn't get scared watching this. I probably wouldn't even be scared unless I was really like a kid. But most of the movie, I didn't bump on when the characters were acting scared. So it did enough to make me believe that they should be scared.
I think one of the funniest things in my eyes was when Jonathan, the two times Jonathan ran into Dracula's wives, he would just throw his hands up and be like, "Oh no, not me! Don't feast on my blood, ladies."
He was ridiculous,
dude. And we actually really loved the way they played his character because. And all the other ones, he's sort of like this innocent, like, what? I don't know what's going on. Who's Dracula? This guy's weird. And this one, he was like kind of an ass.
Yep.
Like he had a lot of attitude.
Kind of cocky, yeah, exactly. He kind of entitled feeling, like he just thought he sat down to dinner. Like Dracula made him dinner. He's like, "You came here to show me some materials," and he was like, "Well, let me just like eat this amazing dinner first." And Dracula's like, "No, now."
Yeah, well, no, Dracula was a bit of a... Dracula's like, "You must eat," and then he goes, "I got some photos." Dracula's like, "Oh yeah, get those photos." He's like, "What the fuck, dude? Like, you got this hot chicken for me."
That's true, but it was the way he like going into a deal that's going to make your career with a wealthy, like he's Transylvania Bill Gates or something. Like he's there to sell himself to Dracula, but you could tell he was torn. He did not want to get up from his dinner, so he just likes.
He didn't want to get in the carriage to go to Transylvania. He was like, "This piece of shit."
Now, I will also say this is not fighting for this movie because this is kind of a cop out, but I will say this is a really good Mystery Science Theater movie as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just there's a lot of funny stuff and a lot of randomly funny stuff. Dracula inexplicably makes all his wives sleep in like cat litter boxes.
It's really
he gets a fancy coffin and they get
the Tempur-Pedic coffin and they just get these little like planks with some dirt in them. It ain't right.
Which is great. There was actually a great shot when the movie actually got us. Which is for a movie from 73. That's pretty good that it can still do that. The movie tricked us. We thought that Van Helsing were such idiots that Dracula was ahead of them the whole time. I actually turned to you at one point in the movie and I'm like, they've been 3 steps behind Dracula this entire film. Mm-hmm. Van Helsing is a disappointment. But when Dracula went back to his coffins to rest, they had broken them all up and spread the dirt all over the ground, so he had nowhere to rest. And you turn to me and you're like, "Oh, they were a step ahead of him!" Like,
I just imagine them burning the coffins, and he's talking to his assistant, going, "Here's the trick: make him think you're an idiot." That's the number one rule in killing vampires: make them underestimate you so severely that you can just destroy their living.
It worked in Fright Night.
Yeah.
So,
act like you didn't see it.
So I think that's fine. But yeah, there were some cool shots out of that.
Was.
This movie it might be more fun now than it was when it came out because
definitely
it's gotten a lot cornier in parts, so it's fun.
Also, there's been so many Draculas.
Yes,
and there's been like 4 attempts at like a Dracula TV series.
Yep.
That like. I mean, who even gives a shit?
Right. You're like saturated. But here's the thing is I think, so let's wrap this up. I think that for anyone who wants to see, I don't think you can understand what kind of the people working in horror were thinking of about vampires and Dracula in general without at least knowing this exists and hopefully seeing it, right? Because this is where everything pivoted. This is where the tragic Romeo and Juliet Dracula really comes from, right? Literally this. So it's a hinge point. It's not. I don't even put it in my. I don't know, off the top of my head. I can't put it in my top 10 Draculas, right? But like it's worth a watch, and it does some really cool stuff. And I think that when it stayed minimal, that's where it stayed best.
Yeah, because there was a few scenes where it was just like absolutely quiet, and those scenes were really tense.
There's like a 4-minute block of this movie where there's no sound at all. There's nothing. There's no music.
It's dead quiet.
There's a guy hunting.
Not even doors creaking. Like
Dracula. Yeah, exactly. There is no sound. It went on so long, it became so noticeable. We were like timing it. We were like, it's still going.
Yeah, like every like 30 seconds, we're like, still no sound. Still no sound.
But it was a creepy scene. It was a cool sequence. So I think where it stayed minimal is whatever. Where it went really made for TV mode.
I do wish they would do a Dracula like how we mentioned, or like how you pointed out. Like Dracula's way cooler in this film, like Michael Myers style. Like just kind of like put him in the background. Like make the people work to find him. Have they really done a Dracula like that, where the vampires where Dracula? I shouldn't say vampires because like 30 Days a Night kind of made some scary vampire shit, but they weren't really.
There's all kinds of lurking vampire things.
But Dracula though,
not Dracula though, because he's too much of a marquee star.
Yeah,
so they don't do that. But you're right. I think it works. We'll watch. I'm gonna make you watch Kolchak. We'll watch party it in the Facebook group, which I know you're about to mention here, but
Well, I got one more thing before we.
That Dracula, that vampire in that is exactly what you're talking about, and it works like a fucking charm. It's so
the formula's been done, and it works.
That part's been done and it works. But I'll give a shout out to Across the Way, to the spiritual cousins of vampires and werewolves, because Wolfen, if you remember, is exactly what you're talking about.
Joe Bob mentioned that in his Halloween Hootenanny.
He did?
Yeah, because they used Panaglide. I think they used Panaglide. Either that or the Steadicam. Mm-hmm. And he said it was a great film.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But they lurk, and you're seeing from their POV and their motion, but they're lurking, and you don't know exactly what they're up to or even why they're up to it until the very, very end of the movie. But they're not shown that much. It's the Spielberg shark thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that part works. But anyway, I think it's worth a watch if you're a Dracula completist. If you're looking for a good time, I don't like going into a movie planning to mock it, but it is.
It's hard to when they do those zoom ins.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so hard.
I mean, things age. I can't imagine how some of the movies that we're looking at now are going to look to people in like 2050 or 2060 when they look back and they're like, watching, Happy Gilmore or something. It's gonna just be. They're gonna be looking at it.
That's gonna age well. That's gonna come on now.
Or Pixels.
Well, okay. So
how bad is Pixels gonna look in the year 2050?
Pixels never look good.
How bad is it gonna look?
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
So now that this is the revenge of How Can We Go?
Yes.
How do you see it playing out?
All right. So first of all, we have to rate this. Right, because that's what we always do.
Yeah.
So if we're rating this movie I would expect this movie to be exactly where it is on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'll tell you why. I would expect it to be exactly 59%, and the reason is because I don't know exactly how Rotten Tomatoes is built, but I think they include reviews from the time that it came out. Right. Every time I go on Rotten Tomatoes and look for reviews,
yeah, I think it depends.
I'll find a Roger Ebert review from like the year it came out, right? And I think for the time it came out, it was a pretty serviceable Dracula. So I think that's there. And then I think anyone who watched modern reviews would be like, this movie is half good, half bad.
Yeah.
So they would, I would expect the people who saw it at the time they saw it to feel like it was a 70%. And I feel like any modern audience who watches it now feels like it's a 40%. And I feel like it lands mathematically right at like around 59 where it is.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like 50-ish.
Yes.
But I think it's totally worth a watch just to see the story changes in a story that most people will know.
Well, we're heading to 0, so we'll be crying for this quality.
Yeah, well,
2 months from now.
we did say like we're gonna try to not go down the 70s zoomy.
Because remember, the 0% category had Dracula 2 lurking in there that we never.
Dude, I know, and it's still lurking in there, like it's lurking in the background.
Dracula 2: The Ascension.
So how do you think Revenge? Like, how do you see us? Like,
so I think this is going to be different because we're including other people and involving other people. I think that's going to be interesting. There's going to be something that didn't happen with the original series, which is I'm assuming we're all going to be pulling together whoever suggests a movie to us and then us on the episodes to fight for movies that we think deserve a rescue, like an Exorcist 3. I mean, that's people have come around to that, but they kind of trashed that at the time, and those kind of movies that they didn't look at. But I anticipate also being like feeling like this movie's garbage, and then it's going to be interesting having a discussion with someone who thinks it's not. So it's just a different dynamic when other people are involved. All I know is I have so much fun finding movies that I'd only heard about but avoided because of reputation, and then being pleasantly surprised. Like happened so many times with the first series. Like happened with Hell Night.
Hell Night was really good.
Which was way better than I expected it to be. Not only from kind of what I heard about it, and not only because slasher is lower in my priority of horror genres than it is for a lot of horror fans, right? So like I just there are so many that I didn't expect to be tremendous that really snuck up on me. Like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, right, for example, which I had seen before the How Low Can We Go series, but was really gratified that a lot of the people who reached out to us in the Facebook group or on our page, they had said, we watched it and we thought it was great and like whatever. Like the fact that people can appreciate movies even if they aren't perfect, I find really thrilling. So it's going to be fun.
I think having other people bring in like what they think is good is going to be super interesting. Because normally, because last time we would see like what was rated like 59, 58 and like pick one. Mm-hmm. But now we're going to have some people in there who got some skin in the game.
Yes.
And I was just looking this up, and Jason X is 19%.
See?
And I would like to make that happen as hard as possible.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because that's the one that like people bring into the group, and they're like, Jason, there's some love. I think was it Cavity Colors just did a Jason X like release of merch, and I was like, if I wasn't a member of Trunk Club right now, I'd be snatching up all them.
Totally. And I'm going to reach out to Cinema Snob. I haven't left yet on our list, but one, because I think he's smart and funny and knowledgeable, but he really he has a way of seeming like he's mocking movies, but then backing into giving them some credit, which he really did for Jason X. Like he would show a clip from the movie and come back and he'd be like, "Stop having great effects, Jason X. I'm trying to hate you." And then he'd come back and he'd be like, "Stop being so fun. I'm trying to hate you." I
want that guy on the Revenge of How Low Can We Go.
That's what I'm saying. So like, there are people who will fight for Jason X.
I was looking at, because like we did so many of them. I was looking at what were some of the films we did, and 10% was The Unborn. Effing Jumbie, dude. I wonder who's good, because I would say Jumbie was the mascot of How Low Can We Go.
Yes, totally.
I wonder who's
he totally was.
I wonder who's good.
And I'll tell you right now, The Unborn is better than 1973 Dracula. So that shows you how the percentages. This one's sitting at 59%, that one's 10%, and I think that movie's better.
I know The Gallows made it to How Low Can We Go.
movie's terrible.
And everyone in the group's been tagging me like, Nick, the Gallows 2's out. And I'm like, can we not do any of that? My goodness. I'm excited for this.
Was that
one.
the most painful? How low can we go? Get the Gallows?
Was it the most painful? Dude, I gotta be honest. For me,
yes,
most painful was Texas Chainsaw 2.
That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. Like I just sat there and like I was almost falling asleep, and I was like, this is just so fucking weird.
You hated that movie. I really liked it. That's weird.
I know.
I mean, I got why you would not like it. It's not. I'm not blind to like why. It's just surprising to me that like I would have. I see. I don't even think that I believe you. I think that if I was sending you to a desert island, and you had to pick between only one movie you could have on the island for the rest of your life to watch, and it was The Unborn or Texas 2, I have a feeling you'd pick Texas 2. It's just more fun. But I could be wrong. I don't know. That movie rubs you the wrong way.
Well, if I had to choose between Texas 2, which does have that great jump scare that I really do love in the radio station,
and it's got Leatherface's amazing jiggle dance move.
Yeah, but hold on. If I had to do Texas 2,
yes,
or the Gallows, if I wanted to hate myself, here's the thing.
The Gallows is zero fun. Texas 2 is fun.
But if I'm on an island, I would sit there and think about how much better the Gallows could have been. And that would provide me with so much entertainment because that movie sucked so bad. Which is why I'm upset there's a second one, because now I'm inevitably going to have to see that.
Well, and as we pointed out, which came up a lot during How Low Can We Go, because we would laugh at some of the badness of the movies and then look it up, and the movie would cost like $8 to make and then make $190 million on the other end, which is what happened with The Gallows, right? That movie made a ton of money.
I don't know how the second one's gonna make any goddamn money.
It's not, but I mean, overseas.
I'm sure it'll make back its budget because it's a horror film. Like it's like right. Video on demand, people eat it up.
Yeah, but it's not gonna make like that level of money. But it's. That's the thing, is we discovered time and again that a lot of the movies had snuck in and made so much. But I'm just getting excited just thinking about all the movies. Like I remember discovering Bad Moon. Oh, right. It was just such a quality film.
That's one of my favorite werewolf movies.
So good, so unique, and
remember discovering Late Phases.
Yes. Boo. But anyway, this is going to be a fun journey. We love that you're on board or accompanying us on the ride. You can come to the Facebook group or message us on the Facebook page at Weekly and give us movie suggestions.
Under 59%.
Any movie under... I mean, we're recording a couple episodes and then releasing these. So to be safe, I would go 55% and below, because we'll probably have recorded a couple others before we even see the message that you're sending now in the future as you listen to this. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we were taking absolute suggestions for any kind of movies that you want to fight for that you think deserved a higher rating than they got.
And if you really want to let us know what film we should do, you should do it in a review as a 5-star review on iTunes, or follow us on Spotify and then send us a message like, hey, that was so good. Hey, by the way, I follow you on Spotify. Here's the film you should do. And then we'll blow our brains out, gather them back up, and do the episode.
Done deal. We can do it.
Hey, well, we got Texas 2 and the Gallows already out of the way. So, I feel like we got some of the dirt off the road.
Indeed.
And it should be smooth sailing. So until next time, stay scary, watch a bunch of horror movies. Bye, guys.
Bye.